Welcome everybody. Today our special guest is Scott Hanselman. Okay, let's give me like a 1 minute introduction our initiative to what we are doing with Piotr, and then we are switching to our guest Scott, and we have like 1 hour for asking Scott a question. So probably if you are not the first time on our meeting with Piotr, we are organizing Azure Poland community. So in this community, we are meeting with our guests, talking about different topics related to Azure and Microsoft stuff, and not only. And if you would like to meet with us, just grab our contact details and write an email or grab us on different social media. We will help you to organize the meeting if you would like to be a speaker, or we can also help you organize the meeting like this one if you have something interesting that you would like to listen about. Today with us, we have Scott Hanselman. I believe for the most people, we don't need to introduce Scott, but for the people who do not know who Scott is, he has like a developer with over 30 years or even more experience. I would say in mostly Microsoft technologies and working with Azure and open source community. And I think at least what I have in my head when I think about Scott, about you are the person who is very active in the social media, thinking about the Scott Hanselman minutes or Azure Friday. So this is like the places when I'm looking for the inspiration or looking for the knowledge that I would like to gather. The last thing before we start, I encourage you to just visit our site. You will find there information about the new event, also recording from the previous one. So this is very important. You are free to ask the questions and unmute yourself. If you don't want to be on the video, please turn off camera when you're asking the question. Either or if it is okay for you to be on the video when you're asking the question, you can turn on the camera. During the other call, please have your camera off. Together with the information about our events, there's also like a request for a topic and information, like a submission form that you can also submit your topic. Definitely, I can promise you with Piotr that will help you if you would like to be on the stage, organize the workshop, or just a short session. Please be brave. So let's have fun. And I'm stopping the presentation, and let's use 1 hour of Scott time for having a great discussion.
Looks like we're checking the YouTube as well.
Yeah, the thing, because we are transmit. Oh, but I have information there is some kind of error. No, it's working fine. There's information that's nothing we can hear on the YouTube.
1 second, I have.
Give us a second. I will copy paste the Teams meeting for just give me like always happening. Now, oops. I will just pause the Teams meeting in case of some kind of problems in the YouTube. So everybody. Piotr will handle you handle the YouTube.
Yes, I'm checking that. Basically, sounds on YouTube should be there right now, but I have to check this in the meantime. So basically, if someone can confirm that, please let me know on chat. That could be helpful.
Okay, so let's start. Or join Teams. Okay, Scott. We will see if we get information if the YouTube is working. If not, our guys have like a possibility to also to join to the Teams and to jump there. We'll figure out somehow in our discussion. Okay, it's fine. So the first question, what you are currently doing in the Microsoft?
What do you do, Hanselman? That's a good opening question. I like that. I work on a team. So I work for Scott Hunter, who owns .NET and kind of all of the runtimes. So he owns .NET, he owns Java, he owns C++, and I own Community, which means everything from going and Googling for with Bing for I want to learn C#, all the way to I want to put an application in Azure. So that means the .NET website, the docs, the experience, the SEO of the thing, the videos, the .NET Live TV, making sure that the community is healthy and happy and can find what they need. We have a belief on my team that you should have one click to community. So for example, the .NET website, which I'll put in the chat, we want to make it so you can go there. Actually, look, if you look right there right now, actually, may I share my screen? Am I able to do that with the?
Yeah, of course.
All right, let's go and do that. Okay, so if I share my screen, this is a coincidence here. I went to .NET website and look at this. You see how this is red and it's pulsing? It's like going live TV, live TV. We click on that and it looks like there's actually a live experience right now. So they're having a stand-up right now about Blazor, right? So
Super.
Anywhere on the .NET website, if there's something happening with real human beings, then we can interact with those humans. And then we have shows, regular shows all week long. There's always something happening with cool people. So here they're going to do performance and load testing with Cecil and with Florin in a couple of days. There's a Visual Studio show, and they're going to talk about the 64-bit Visual Studio. Always something happening. So my team owns all this stuff. We've also got, and a lot of people don't know about these architecture guides, which are fantastic. These are free books. So if you want to learn .NET, there are free architecture guides here. So for example, architecting cloud native apps. These are not small books. Let me show you what this looks like. This is like a complete free book. It's got 200 pages of like learning Kubernetes and how do you make a cloud native application written in .NET. Talks about the difference between a monolithic approach and microservices approach. So my team owns that. That's our guy Nish, who works on this. Serverless, all these free books are available. And then making sure that you get the right version of .NET. And actually, speaking of .NET, you see that .NET 5 is the current version right now. Someone recently upgraded. Let me find it here. There we go. Check this out. This gentleman here works on Stack Overflow's ad server, and they recently upgraded from 4.6 to 5.0. Okay.
Yeah.
This is the server. This is the ad response time.
Super.
It's down 30% just by upgrading. Now look at the memory though. The memory usage is down almost 70% just by upgrading.
I wonder what you introduced with the 6.0.
Yeah, 6 is going to be even better. So actually, it's great that you mentioned that. So if we go here and we say .NET 6 performance blog, we just did a new blog, Stephen Tobe did, on performance improvements in .NET 6. I'll put that in the chat as well. And this is a huge blog post. This is all the improvements. And when I say huge, I mean like pages and pages and pages and pages and pages. More detail than you need. But this is a tradition because we've been improving performance a lot since .NET Core 2. And there has been over 6,500 pull requests into the branch for the .NET runtime just to make things better and faster. So he goes through it talking about all the different features to make things as fast as possible. Some things are 16 times faster, some things are double the speed, and he goes through all the detail here. It's just really wonderful. So my team, manages the blogs, manages anything that's community related.
Super. Piotr, are you with us?
Yes. I tried to fix problems on YouTube, but yeah, I know. Okay, so I think we can go to the next question which we have. What's your favorite thing about Ask Me Anything? About this?
About the format of Ask Me Anything?
Yeah.
I would say that I am always surprised that we can fill the time, because I don't think I'm that interesting. And then someone will ask some question that's a good question, and I'll go, "Ooh, that's a good question." And then we go running, you know? I would like to hear from someone in the chat, maybe. You don't have to come off camera if you want to just ask anything question. I can talk about .NET. I can talk about my blog, my podcast. I can show my terminal, do all kinds of stuff.
You know, we gathered the questions from the survey, but please free to unmute and just ask the question to the Scott. This is like an hour for us, or 45 minutes left. So please be brave.
All right, so I can go first then. Hi, Scott. So can you tell me about Blazor? Do you think it's something that is going to stay for a bit longer, or it's rather temporary? And my blink and go.
It is absolutely permanent. I would look at it this way. Blazor is two things. It's running .NET in WebAssembly, and then it's the framework that sits on top of that. So running .NET in WebAssembly is just another target, right? You can run the .NET runtime on ARM, on x64, on x86, and on WASM. So that's not going anywhere. WebAssembly is not going anywhere. And then the framework that sits on top of that, the interaction framework of Blazor, is absolutely one of the biggest things that's happened in .NET 5 and in .NET 6. So I don't get the impression it's going to go anywhere. However, I do want to remind people about why would you go to Blazor. For example, and once again, because I'm used to sharing my screens, I'm going to share my screen again. For example, I've got my podcast, got 805 episodes, and I was doing a user group recently, and someone said, oh, you should make this Blazor. Let's talk about that. Should I? It's a web page. It's a web page that scrolls, and you click on people, and then it shows a player. Like, is there anything here that should be Blazor? No.
Yeah, probably not.
It just doesn't make any sense, right? So, you know, I hear usually early in career people in under 30 who are just maybe less than 10 years in are like, oh yeah, we're going to convert the whole website into Blazor. It's the web, right? Like Blazor's great. If you want to make an application, maybe the admin site could be in Blazor, right? Maybe the back end could be in Blazor. Maybe my email application could be in Blazor, or a form, you know, if I'm filling out forms, but there's no forms, it's a web page. So this is in Razor pages. It's very clean code. It's easy to read. And there's absolutely no reason for me to change this into Blazor. This page loads in 12 milliseconds. If I were to go and put this thing into Blazor, I would have to download the entire .NET framework in a megabyte or two and deal with it. That would be silly. If we look at one of the pages here, I mean, look how clean that is. There's no web framework that's going to make that cleaner, period. And if we even like zoom in a little bit on like it's just clean. Sometimes your website just needs to be a for loop, is what I would remind early in career people who want to over-engineer things. But on the back end, if I was going to have an administrative website, then Blazor absolutely should be that. Or if I'm making a full-on application. But yeah, Blazor is not going anywhere. But it's important to remember that motorcycles and minivans can exist on the same streets. Sometimes you want to go really fast in a motorcycle, and sometimes you need to go to the grocery store, and you need to take the kids to football practice.
See, it depends what we compare things to, because if we compare Blazor to JavaScript frameworks like Angular, which both are the big canons really for the big jobs, for the big tasks, for the applications, not for the simple pages. In this case, that decision is a bit more interesting, right? Rather, like it's pretty obvious that you're not going to choose Blazor for a simple website, but will you choose Blazor over Angular, for example, if you are doing a bit more complicated application?
Yep.
Okay.
And having a toolkit means having a spanner and a screwdriver and a hammer and all these different things and being able to pick which one matters. And what's nice about ASP.NET is ASP.NET has web APIs, minimal APIs, Blazor, Razor pages. There's choices. Use the ones and mix and match.
All right,
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah, good
we
question.
have we have the next questions in the chat. How do you see the future of WebAssembly? The .NET will be as fast as C++ one day. What is the future of Java in your opinion?
.NET can be as fast as C++ and in some cases is fast as C++. It just depends.
Perfect answer. It depends. It's always like a key.
No, I'm not
answer
saying I'm being serious. Like this is a thing, okay? If you're doing if you're handwriting the code, yes, you'll always be able to do it faster in C++. That's not because of the language, right? It's some amount faster. You can always craft the C++ better. But jitters and optimizers, just-in-time optimizers like the ones with .NET, and now we have multi-stage optimizers. We have ones that will do a quick pass and then later come by and do a more thorough pass, can absolutely get things running as fast as C++. And in fact, are you familiar with the application VR Desktop? VR Desktop is an application that you use on your Oculus VR headset, and it has to be less than 10 milliseconds, and it allows you to watch your desktop on your Oculus. And I actually had the gentleman on my show. It's written in C#. So would you think C# when you wanted to go and make a cross-platform high, high speed, low latency, less than 10 milliseconds kind of an application? Probably not, but he did it anyway. So yeah, I mean, C++ is great. It has its place, but don't think that .NET is 3 times slower than C++ because it's just not. Yeah.
And what about WebAssembly? I believe this is also like very interesting topic.
From my perspective, WebAssembly is just another part of the internet, right? Remember, a couple of years ago, we didn't really count on JavaScript. 10 years ago, people would say, oh, do you have JavaScript enabled, right? Do you have support for that? 10 years ago, we didn't have SVG on browsers. So if I wanted to like tell my boss we should do our pictures as SVGs, they would say no, right? I mean, keep in mind, I'm very old, so I remember things. Did you know that there's actually 2 versions of GIFs? There's GIF 87 and GIF 89. Okay, I'm going to mute Powell.
Yeah.
There's 2 versions of GIFs. And there was a time in 1987 and 1988 when the GIF 89 came out and someone was like, well, we're going to do this project. We're going to use GIFs. And we had to think about the version number of the GIF. The same thing applies to WebAssembly. First, it's experimental and it's revolutionary and not everyone supports it. And then it just becomes a part of the internet. It's built into the browser. We can count on it now. We can count on SVG. We can count on CSS. We can count on HTML5. So is WebAssembly going anywhere? No, I think it's just another runtime. It's just like saying that there's a runtime or a CLR built into the browser. So I look at it as a target operating system.
I would say it will be live until we figure out something new, something more interesting, more fancy, if we can use that like a fancy word.
Oh, hang on, my boss is chatting me now.
Do we have the next person who is brave to ask the question to Scott?
I don't think it's brave. I want to say remind people of that. Okay, don't say brave. I'm just a guy. I'm just a guy in my house with the rest of you, and you all are just guys and gals in your house. You know, we have the wonderful internet that's connecting us like this. But someone, I did a user group recently, and somebody was like, "Oh, it's Scott Hanselman. He needs no introduction." Maybe he does need an introduction. Maybe he. They don't know me. Just a guy. Just a person. You know. So it's not brave. It's not brave to raise your hand. Just raise your hand.
Or even just unmute yourself without raising the hand.
Yeah,
free.
but of course, yeah. Make sure that you are decent. People are just so quiet. If we were in person, I would just point at somebody and say, "You, what do you want to say?"
No, still. Okay.
Oh, there's a question. How does Java look like in competition with .NET? This is my opinion. I think that Microsoft doesn't think as much about competition the way we used to. I think that 10 years ago, it was like, if .NET doesn't win, then we lost. But there's so many great languages out there, right? There's Java and there's .NET as ecosystems. There's C# and there's F#. But within Java, there's Groovy and there's languages that run in the Java runtime. There's Scala, but then there's also cool languages like Rust and Erlang and Go. It's not about the language winning or competing. Java's fine. We have a Java now. Microsoft has an open JDK that's free, runs great in Azure, doesn't have any license fees. That's cool. I don't think it needs to be a competition. So is .NET faster? Yes, in my opinion. We have the metrics to look at it. You can go to Tech Empower benchmarks, and you can see how much faster it is. So, but as far as competition, I'm not worried about it. Somebody had a comment?
Well,
yeah,
I know at least. Go on.
Yeah, go on, please.
Okay, I know at least one story where the .NET things around Android are made faster than the native Android, which is Java. So I think this slightly proves the point that Xamarin can be faster than native Java on Java Android system.
That's a very good point. Absolutely. And I would remind us all that like algorithms and understanding algorithms are something that is universal, right? I would much rather have a programmer who understands how computers work than hire a programmer who knows a specific language. You see what I'm saying? Like we put on our resumes and our CVs, must know Java, 10 years JavaScript, da, 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 da. For loops are for loops, right? Let's talk about operations and order n, memory, CPU, caching, layer 2, all the different computers are the same. They're all running the same. And I'm sure that I could go if I wanted to a company tomorrow and learn Ruby in 6 months. And the same concepts about how large systems are designed would be the same. I wouldn't feel, I'm sure I'd be confused for a while, but I don't think it would, it's so foreign. It's so different. You know what I mean? Like we hear about people learning languages. Like here's an example. You all speak more than one language, right? Just because we're here talking to me in English. If somebody said you have to learn another language, you're like, okay, I guess I'm going to move to that country and learn that language. You're not going to freak out about it and say, oh, no, our language is the best language, right? I was in Finland, actually. Have you ever heard the Finnish people speak? It's a very interesting language. And somebody said, will C# win over F#? And I thought, what, is there a fight? Does C# have to win over F#? And then I remembered I was in Finland, and I said, is Finnish winning as a language? And they were like, well, no, there's only 5 million Finnish people. And I was like, well, maybe you should speak English. Maybe you should give up because you're not going to win. And they were like, no, well, we like our language. And I was like, oh, you like your language? So you want to speak your language that's not going to win? And they're like, yeah. And I said, well, then use the language and be happy. It's not a competition, right? So you can express yourself. You can make yourself understood. So whether it's F# or C# or Finnish or Polish or English or whatever, use the tool that makes you happy for the poetry that you want to create today. You know what I mean? Good questions here in the chat.
Scott, I will pause the question because before this question, Nirap was want to say something. So maybe.
Of course, please.
Yeah, hi Scott. This is maybe irrelevant to the asking you the question here, but yeah, still I would like to ask you because for the past 2 years I am into the cloud operations domain, and I had been experienced AWS as well as Azure IaaS services. So I see Azure is a little bit more of a covering kind of thing. It's not so open and not so lucid in terms of the how AWS is. So what do you want to say on this? This is like overall feeling what I have been with the platform. From the IaaS perspective, I am saying infrastructure as a service. Yeah.
I don't understand the question. I'm sorry. Can you
Yeah.
try again?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So, like in comparison to the AWS and Azure, so I see Azure IaaS services, it's bit complicated compared to the AWS services what has been provided.
Is it?
So, yeah, this is what I feel like, and few more people had the same experience. So I wanted to know from your like perspective how it is actually.
So you're saying Azure infrastructure is more complicated than AWS?
This is like from the support point of view, I'm saying because I had been into the support Azure and AWS.
Support specifically.
Yeah. So from that point of view, I'm saying this is what my personal experience is. Like it is so lucid in AWS from the compute point of view or volume point of view, storage and all the other stuffs there. So
I guess
from that perspective,
I don't have an answer for you. I don't use AWS, right? So I don't know.
Okay.
My opinion is, I mean, I've used AWS a couple of times. I've never had to call their support, and I've never had to call Azure support either. I think the Azure portal is way simpler than the AWS collection of icons. It's a very complicated thing, in my opinion, to make stuff on AWS. I think that the Azure supports stuff that is automated. I think is quite extraordinary, and I don't think Azure gets enough credit for it, particularly around diagnosing problems in an automated fashion. So, for example, here I'm on my podcast website, and I can go down here and click on any one of these and say, all right, I'm having 500 errors. And then there's like a literal chat person that will go and tell me, all right, I'm having memory usage issues on this thing. And then it'll go and suck the information out of the logs, analyze it, and then give me an analysis of a diagnosis of a problem, see, and then make suggestions. But that these are the kinds of things that have kept me from having to go and talk to anybody on support. But if you're having a support issue, I don't really know what to tell you about that. You're saying it's expensive or it's annoying or it's frustrating or what? Like you just go here and say, create a support request. Are you saying it's slow?
No, I mean to say the point of view, like all the inside terminologies what has been portrayed out there. So in terms of that, I was saying, yeah. So that was my main intention from that point of view.
No, I appreciate that. I think what you're describing though is the difference between perception and reality, and I think that can be really challenging, right?
Yeah.
Amazon was first, right? Like they started first. And there's a perception that it's the one that people do for startups, and it's the perception that Microsoft is the enterprise one. How do you change perceptions? You do it one person at a time, very, very slowly.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right.
But I don't really have an answer. I would say, just as I mentioned before with languages, you're going to be successful no matter which one you pick, right? Whether it's
Yeah.
Azure or Amazon or DigitalOcean or something small, or it's C# or F# or Java. It's computers. Clouds are clouds. What's interesting is stuff that we build on top of the clouds, you know. I particularly like Azure for reasons. That it is more friendly for me, and I like the portal a lot, and I also like the portal having the integrated command line. And I wish that people would see it, and I think that a lot of people maybe don't use it just because they have anger at Microsoft from many years ago.
Okay, yeah.
Like there's this phrase. I'll show. Actually, I wrote a blog post. You might get a kick out of this. Let me show you something. I wrote a blog post a number of years ago. You probably haven't heard this word before, pappy. It's like your grandfather. And you know the movies where someone plays like a cowboy, and like they have a southern accent like this, and then when they're talking about their grandfather, that's their pappy. Okay, so I wrote this article. It's called "Microsoft Killed My Pappy." Imagine how angry you would be if Microsoft killed your grandfather, right? You're a young man, you never met your grandfather, but you know Microsoft killed him in the browser wars, right? So you're angry about something that happened 50 years ago because Microsoft killed your grandfather. Microsoft did some dumb stuff in the 90s, right? That was 30 years ago. So I think some people may be angry for things that happened in the past. Like, I'm not mad at Japan. I'm not mad at Germany. You know what I mean? Generational pain is a thing. And at some point, you got to stop thinking that Microsoft's out to get you.
Yeah, thank you.
Your excellent question.
There's a great question about the C# and developing too fast. And looking at that, I have a smile on my face because when I was starting my adventure as a developer, like very much years ago, like the whole Visual Studio was coming on 2 DVDs and then 3 DVDs of MSDN. And we have like 1 year of waiting for the new update. So yeah, it's changed a lot. Looking at the speed, how the features are bringing to the language, to the whole ecosystem. When you think about updates,
people complaining that C# is developing too fast. It's been 20 years, and we are adding the features that people are asking for. We're not sitting around adding new features for fun. Like, we're talking to customers. There's many millions of people that are working on this stuff. And it's an important philosophy. These are great questions, by the way. So I appreciate SP in the chat there asking this question. So when I answer the questions, I want to answer them honestly. So don't think I'm being like defensive or angry. I'm just excited because it's a great question. How do people think products get designed, like developed, you know? Like, am I sitting around, like stroking my beard and twirling my mustache and going, I'm going to add an unnecessary feature to C#? No, right? How? It's either a business thing, like a business asked, Dell, Walmart, somebody important said, I need a feature, right? The community asked, blog posts, YouTube videos, Twitter, like we read those, we look at those. If you write a blog post about like, here's why C# needs records, you know, think about this unnecessary feature. If you're familiar with await and async, everyone thought that was unnecessary. Do you know where that came from? It's in JavaScript now. It came from C#. C# made await and async, which is now a thing that is in JavaScript that everyone just loves, right? And takes for granted. They forget how many of these features came from C#. Another unnecessary feature would be link, right? Language integrated query in C#. That's insane. Why would you do that? It's pretty freaking useful to be able to query your objects in a graph, right? You know, you can for loop over them, or you can write a link query. So These features are not unnecessary. They are actually part of an ongoing series of interviews and year-long design systems, which, by the way, are published live. Do you know that we actually put the C# design meetings on the web? A lot of people don't know that. I will show you, which means you can get involved and you can watch these meetings. We've been actually publishing the design, excuse me, we've been publishing the design meetings for 13 years. Look at this person. That's Anders freaking Heilsberg, inventor of C#. And they filmed an hour-long meeting on C# 4.0, talking about, look at this, what are the problems that we're going to be doing? They were actually talking about multi-processor machines, machines with like 64 processors or 80 processors. And they were talking about this in 2008. So making design decisions about C# in anticipation of machines with a lot of power. And now here I am, 13 years later, on my computer. Let's look at my computer, shall we? Look at that. So here I am on a 24-core desktop, and now I'm thankful to Anders and the team that works on C# and .NET that I'm prepared to meet that challenge. So today's unnecessary feature is tomorrow's thoughtful feature that was added. So yeah, I would disagree with those people, SP. What a lovely question. Good stuff, my friends. Actually, you know what today's unnecessary feature is that everyone's complaining about? Everyone's complaining about minimal APIs. Have you heard about these? Have you heard about those?
Yep.
Minimal APIs. Check out, look at this. Look how pretty this is. How can you not be excited about that? That's so clean. People are mad. Why are you going to be mad about that? If you don't like it, don't use it. You know that
Scott, I'm thinking how our future, like a software developers, will look like, because we are trying to deliver application faster in the code, looking on on different engines. For example, we are having this like minimal API. Then we have like a local platforms, and we have like AI supporting us in the development, right? GPT-3 algorithm that you can just write what you want, and it will change the code, like GitHub Copilot. So this is like, for me, it is like great.
It is great. I think it's just scary. Like, look at this right here. That's hello world now in C#. And people are freaking out. So let's click on this link and see why we're freaking out, right? This is how we taught C# before. I've taught C# for many years. I've taught C# in colleges, at universities. And you know how I teach it? I teach it like this. Okay, everybody, let's learn C#, okay? We're going to say hello world, okay? Ignore this, ignore this, ignore this. That's a comment. Don't worry about that. We'll learn about it later. Don't worry about that. That's a class. That'll be later. Don't worry about that. Ignore that. Public static void main. That's a string array. Ignore that. We're not really going to use that. Let's just focus on this. So just ignore all of this stuff. And then what are these? Just ignore those. Those really don't matter. So that's how we teach C# now. You see what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
And people don't like it. So then don't use it. It's not that complicated, you know?
But looking that we have like a ReSharper connected to Visual Studio, you know, the namespace. I just do not think about namespace, because the tooling is adding those namespace that we need to have in our source code. So
there is a famous book in America. It's a business book, and it's called Who Moved My Cheese? And it's dealing with change. Imagine if you're a mouse in a maze, and you're running in the maze. The cheese is at the end of the maze. You understand what I'm saying? You've heard this term. Do you guys understand this idea? Right? You're the mouse. You're running, and then the cheese is here, and this is your goal. So this book was written many years ago to help people deal with change, because you get to the end of the maze and someone moved your cheese, and now you're angry. This is an example where Microsoft moved your cheese. So you can either be upset about it and you can be frustrated by it, or you can deal with the change and not be sad about it. By the way, let me show you this cool thing. I haven't shown a lot of people this before. Close folder. Check this out. Have you seen this? Have you seen .NET notebooks, you guys? Watch this. It's so good. What? Okay, so I'm in VS Code, and I have like text, like a book. So this is like a book, right? You're like, okay, Scott, yay, you made a book. Huh? Wouldn't that be a cool way to learn C#?
Super.
So this is all a living book. It's a notebook. Now, imagine if I had to put using system that every single time. This would be impossible. Would not be any fun. So what we're doing is we're removing a lot of the messy stuff. So if we go back over here, look how clean that is. That's cool. And it's still C#. It's still .NET. So then we can do really cool stuff. So if you're mapping an ID, you can attributes, which we've seen in C# for 15 years, right? And we can pluck out the ID from the route. We get the page from the query string. We can grab services from our service collection, and then we can pull out a header. Now, write that code today in your mind, right? Request dot query string, P, check it for, make sure that it's not null, pulling stuff like that's just being more crisp, more terse. Here's another great one. I love this. Check this out. So someone goes to find a to-do in a list of to-dos. They go /to-do/5, right? The to-do database gets injected by dependency injection. We go and we look for the to-do in the database, and then we put it into this variable right here. And then if it's true, meaning we found it, we return a 200 OK and the to-do. And if it's false, we return a 404. Now this is all on more than one line. So if we brought it over here, it would look like this. But I think it would freak people out. Like that's too scary because it's all on one line. So you just got to like break it up. But when I look at stuff,
what does it do underneath with this syntax? Because obviously, at the end of the day, it's like if you've implemented it in the classic controller, there's just a class that inherits from a controller. Then you've got some syntax now that's been all shorted down. But basically, underneath it must be doing similar things that it used to do with the controllers, right?
Yeah.
Because it's compiling to the same thing.
That's a great question. Exactly. So the difference is this guy here, the rocket ship or the fat arrow, this is a lambda, right? So this is just an expression. If I wanted to move that down here, whatever. This is not like real.
Yeah.
Then this is just the thing that you're building with is your functions. It doesn't matter if they're loose functions or they're on existing classes or in utility. It doesn't matter, right? Anything you can point to with a fat arrow, you can do.
Yeah, it's not effectively a controller method. That's it.
Yeah, it's just but it's less ceremony. MVC doesn't go anywhere, right? It's just less ceremony
for the developer, but underneath is doing similar thing. Maybe that's the argument to have the people a bit less scary.
Yeah. Well, and this is a great point that you make, and I appreciate that. Is when someone comes out with a Tesla, and people go, "Wow, this is new, amazing technology." They freak out about the new technology, but they forget it's still got wheels, It's still got rubber tires. It's still got a windshield, the glass in the front. Still got a steering wheel until Elon gets rid of that. Computers aren't changing that much. We're just changing the layers of abstraction. So you're right. The things underneath, it's the same jitter. It's the same CLR. But again, if you don't like it, don't use it, right? We have Razor, which is nice and clean for pages like my podcast. We have Blazor for avoiding JavaScript and doing everything in C#. We have minimal APIs. We just wanted to make it so someone could make a microservice that returns some JavaScript or returns some JSON or some XML without having to make a controllers and a models and a views and a web config and da-da-da-da-da. Like hello world in console is one line, but hello world on the web is 5 folders and 3 config files and a controller. You know what I mean? Model view controller is fine. It's not going anywhere, but it shouldn't be required to say hello world or then return a little bit of JavaScript or to do a little bit of this or that, you know? Check this out, actually. This is a great...
Scott, look how we evolve when I think about building like an application in Windows, MFC, C++. How many lines of the code we need to write to just show the simple window? You know, like you need to have like a huge book of Pet's code to just show a window. And now, super, with one line.
Yep, exactly. Look at this one here. This is kind of interesting. So here's an HTTP client that's going to go and call and get some JSON. But it needs to return the JSON. So think about how you would do that today naively, right? You call me, and then I call over there, right? But let's say the JSON is like, I don't know, 3 megabytes. Naively, I would call over there, load 3 megabytes of JSON into memory, hold it there, and then turn around and hand it back to you. But what I really want to do is proxy it. I want to stream it and avoid using a lot of memory. That would have been incredibly complicated in the past. Look how clean this is. Get the stream and stream it back. Results.stream. Very clean. And then we're mapping a get to that. That's just like a great example of like regular stuff that you're doing all the time that you want to make things cleaner. Map this path, redirect to another one. I shouldn't need a controller and a whole class just to do a simple redirect. Or download a file. How many times have we written 12 lines of code to just download a file off of the disk? Not cool. All right, another question here. How long does it get to familiarize yourself with new topics like Azure Friday? That's interesting, actually, because I actually am I'm doing an Azure Friday at noon. So I will probably study for maybe 15, 20 minutes. But the challenge is I've been in software for 30 years. Like it takes a little while for me to understand how long that is. I've seen a lot. And if you go back to when I was a kid, now you're looking at 40 plus years. There's very little that I would be surprised by. You know, like I built large web systems and web farms in the 90s. So if someone's showing me something, I have a pool of stuff that I can look back on and say, oh, that's like this other thing that I saw. So what's great about being old in tech is that you get to see all this cool stuff. And in 20 years, when you all have been around that long, you'll be able to see a new thing and you're going to be able to absorb information really quickly because you're going to go, oh, that's like the iPad that I saw back in 2008, or that's like Kubernetes. Like when Kubernetes came out, everyone's like, oh, that's amazing. But the concepts had been around since the 70s, you know? So I can get up to speed quicker simply because I've been absorbing information for a long period of time. I think that being in software a long time is about learning how to learn. Martin's got their hand up.
Yeah.
Oh, can you hear me?
I
Yes.
can.
Unmute took a while. Hey, Scott, thanks for joining us today. Thanks to
course.
Michael and Peter for organizing. So I had a question. It's more of a community question. You mentioned the word community at the beginning. As a community program manager myself, I wanted to see your take. You know, we could argue that communities date back all the way to when we lived in caves as a tribe, but the earliest signs of communities on the internet when it was created would be around developers or groups of people that coded and they just went online and they talked about it and then they found similar like-minded people.
Sure.
How have you seen, you know, communities evolve over the last year? Where do you think it's headed? What's your take, and what would you recommend, for example, even to a community such as this Polish user group around Azure? Any advice, or how should they pivot or react to the, you know, how do you keep the community engaged? It seems you have, you know, thousands of podcasts and you keep the community together. So, you know, just it's a big broad topic, but approach it in any way you want.
I have spent time in Poland and hung out with these gentlemen and others around in a couple of different cities, and I recognize that when I hang out your side, that side, often I'm in user groups, and it might be, you know, 40 white guys that are 32 because it's Poland. And you all might look this side and think Americans worry about race and worry about diversity and all that kind of crap too much. But the thing that makes community is less about diversity and more about inclusion, because if you include everybody, then diversity will hopefully, you know, be an achievable thing depending on the country that you're living in. So I really push the word inclusion in all things. How do I make a community where everybody feels welcome, man or woman, old or young, you know, whatever? Because diversity is age and where they grew up and the language that they speak and all those kind of things, because then you get interesting conversations. If everybody is the same person who went to the same school, who learned from the same professor, then they're all going to come up with the same solution. We see this in Silicon Valley, where startups will hire people who only went to Stanford and only grew up in the Bay Area, and then they all make the same thing, right? So when I try to make a community, I try to make it clear that everyone is welcome and everyone's voice is valued as long as they're nice. So my recipe for community is don't be a dick. You know what I mean? Just be kind, just chill. Whatever it is, we'll work it out, but let's all be here with the same goal. So when you make a community, what's your goal? What's your focus? What's your plan? Is it knowledge sharing? Is it job sharing? Is it lifting everyone up and getting them promoted? Like, what's your thing that you believe? Religions pop up because they believe the same thing. So you have to share a belief. Software is free. Make lots of money. Like those things, you know, you need to figure out how to reconcile those kinds of things. So that's my formula for community is everyone should feel welcome and included, and then you know, things around diversity run out of inclusion. The opposite of inclusion, of course, is exclusion. So when you're actively excluding people, the only reason you should actively exclude someone is because they're an asshole. Use my French.
Fair enough. Thanks.
No, that's a great question. Thank you, Martin.
Looking at the time, we have like 4 minutes. So the last question probably for the Scott.
I hope this wasn't a waste of time. Like people are very quiet, but I'm hoping that
Nobody is leaving. Welcome, Adam.
Hey,
Now,
hello.
who has
Hey,
more
Adam,
fancy room?
Adam is trying to make me look bad. Now I have to turn my lights on because his light is so nice.
RGB or go home.
Uh-oh. I didn't know I was in for competition now.
Yeah, I thought I was gonna make some, but I also have a question.
Nice.
Yeah, cool. So, Scott, I know you're a big .NET guy, but if I were to ask you what gets you excited in upcoming Azure things, of course, not under NDA, but from the public things, what is the next big thing for you?
I think that the world has not yet figured out how powerful serverless can be. I feel like for a while, everybody was talking about serverless and screaming about serverless, and it kind of like plateaued, it kind of like flattened out. I am still myself a platform as a service person doing a lot of work on app service. I think that we as a community have really just touched the beginning of what a cloud native application could look like, right? For example, if we use my podcast, which is what that's my basic hello world application. Right now, it was before it was running on a virtual machine. That doesn't make any sense. So I moved it to app service, but it's still kind of spinning up in a container all by itself. And then it has a bunch of JSON APIs in the back, but it talks to one app service. It can't scale. If my podcast got on Hacker News, it could fall over. And the only way I can scale the podcast would be to scale up. Just get a bigger computer. But if I was doing things with serverless, I would have the main part of the website be static, totally static, and just serve HTML. And then I'd have all the JSON backend be individual little functions or minimal APIs, right? Small, tiny, responsible APIs. And then each one could scale individually. And then I'd throw it all behind serverless, and I'd have per second billing. Because right now I pay like $100 a month for my websites because I pay upfront for an app service. But they're up all the time, but they don't fall asleep, right? So I still pay even when they're asleep. I think that the community really needs to get on board with serverless because it's cheaper, it's more efficient, and it scales infinitely. And I think that's a thing that we can work on. That's what I'm excited about in the Azure space.
Okay, thank you.
Great question. Thank you.
So I think this is the last question. Looking on the time, thank you everybody who asked question to Scott. And Scott, thank you for being with us for this hour. I think it was very valuable looking on the questions and the answers you provided, especially looking on the examples, the new things that coming to new and also old one, because at least from my perspective, I was not aware of everything that you was showing to us.
Sure. I like answering questions like this because I didn't expect some of these questions, and that's really good. That keeps it. It's better than a presentation because then it's not like watching a YouTube. Like it's like I'm a real person and I'm answering them in real time.
Super. So thank you for today. Just came back to our website if you want to see more stuff interesting that we are organizing with the Piotr, and probably in the near future you'll be able to also watch the recording of this session on the webpage.
Cool.
Have a good day, Scott. Have a good evening for people from the Poland, and I don't know how many people are outside from the Poland, but I see some other names.
Yeah, I'm looking here in the chat, seeing whose names I recognize. Cool. All right, my friends. I will catch you later. Thanks for organizing this.
Thank you, Scott, very much for this call. So have a nice day.
All
Take
right.
care.
Bye.
Thank you, Scott.
Have a nice day.
Thanks.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, guys. That was great. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take
Bye-bye.
care.